For my project, I wanted to learn more about the Korean comfort women. I knew very little about the comfort women before starting this project, so I wanted to know more about who these women were and what they went through, how they were taken, how they were treated, and what happened to them once the war ended. Comfort women were Asian women that the Japanese forced into Japanese military brothels to sexually serve the soldiers during Japanese colonial rule from 1932 until colonial rule ended in 1945. These women were taken from all over Asia and other territories that were occupied by the Japanese. It is thought that about 80% of the women that were taken were Korean, mostly due to the close proximity between Korea and Japan. Though the exact number of women is unknown, the estimate number ranges from 70,000 all the way up to 200,000, and the ages ranging from teens to early 20s, some as young as 12. During and in the time leading up to the war, money was very tight for many families. Some families had to sell their daughters to brothels. There were also employment agents and many labor brokers that would promise factory or other work to women who were then forced into prostitution. One main way these labor brokers would find women was going to small towns with poor peasant families, knowing that it would be easier to trick them with promises of money and a good job. Daily life for these women was an extremely hard one. It consisted of violence and sexual exploitation, servicing up to 50 men a day, horrific living conditions, unsanitary medical care, and forced abortions. After the war, many of the women were killed, abandoned, and left to die or forced to commit suicide. There are estimates that only about 1/4 to 1/3 of all comfort women survived. Those that did survive developed PTSD and other disorders, some even lasting 60 years after the war ended. Japan refused to give an official apology to the women for years after the war. Kim Hak-soon was the first woman to come out publicly and testify on August 14, 1991. She was very angry with the Japanese government and demanded an apology. In 2015, a settlement with Japan over Japan's responsibility for the comfort women's service for the military during the war was reached. On March 27th of the same year, the Japanese parliament issued an official apology. However, some of the Koreans questioned the authenticity of the apology and still feel like justice for these women have not been reached. To commemorate the comfort women, various memorials, museums, and statues have been created. Throughout Seoul and the world, you can find statues of comfort women. There are often flowers, scarves, or hats left on these statues to honor the women. Stories of survivors and witnesses, interviews and testimonies about events that were experienced and witnessed are also featured in many museums and memorials in hopes of bringing to life what these women had to live through. I'm very glad that I chose to research more into the comfort women. I was able to learn a lot about what these poor women went through. What they experienced was inhumane and a tragedy, but it's a story that deserves to be heard, and these women should not be silenced.